The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday Morning Show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal. 1 week. And it is Nebraska and Northwestern in Ireland.
There are a surprising number of people who still don't know that Nebraska's playing in Ireland. I've talked to a handful of people in the last week going to Ireland. They're like, oh, for what? I'm like, well, Nebraska's playing there. They are?
Really?
Seriously, there are those human beings out there. Those would not be the people that listen to this show.
Good for week 0, right? Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal with you till 9 this morning. Can find us. We'll be streaming hour 2 on the ESPN Lincoln Facebook and YouTube. Make that Facebook and Twitter feed. And, of course, can always stream us, ESPNLincoln.com. We are off and running. Elijah is locked into the studio. We were at the Hail Varsity Club yesterday, and it was great to get caught up with Mitch Sherman. There's a lot that drops today. Yesterday was reaction day for national media, local media, and fans about Scott Frost and his coach's show, but more meat and potatoes today when it comes to, all right, who's going to be your captains? Who's going to get a black shirt? And it's kind of your final day of prep before tomorrow. And tomorrow is the press conference ahead of Nebraska-Northwestern around 3 o'clock or so at Memorial Stadium. And then the team jumps on the airplane and heads on off Monday. So we are getting into it, and a lot's been laid out there. Still some spots up for grabs, but it feels, Mark and Elijah, like Nebraska's turned the corner, so to speak, in the home stretch, at least in their prep ahead of this ball game. They'll practice over in Ireland, of course, a couple of times, but
I think it's 3 total.
3 total, but they're a lot of work's been done. You heard from Whipple this week. You heard from Chinander. We heard from Frost. You heard from a number of players. Turner Corcoran was very interesting to hear from this week. So it's pretty big for where Nebraska's at. Also, the payday that happened this week. You had the $1 billion deal get done by Commissioner Warren and the Big Ten. So the Big Ten's going to own all of college football Saturday with a monster triple header with Fox, with CBS, and with NBC, and the ATM and a dollar sign.
Is it exclusive? It's not exclusive though, so there's nothing to say that the SEC couldn't kind of do something similar,
sure.
Right? Now, of course, ESPN and ABC are going to be in play. Mm-hmm. ESPN and ABC are going to desperately cling on to SEC football. And I wonder if that changes a little bit about what they're thinking about the super conferences in any way, right? It sort of reminds me of boxing, where you got the WBC and the right. Yeah, the separate divisions. It's kind of similar in that way, because the fact that the Big Ten essentially fired ABC and ESPN is...
Well, I'd flip it around. You had 300 and, I believe, 50 million offered, 380 offered by CBS and NBC, and ESPN didn't want to bump up their number.
Well, but I know. But what I'm saying is to just completely walk away from ESPN.
Sure.
There's no conference that's really done that.
No,
at all. Like, and you wonder what the ramifications will be. I'm glad it's happened. I think the package is really good. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I think you'll get a ton of, and especially as streaming becomes more and more ubiquitous. and all the
you've
all
got
the different choices that people have.
Good platform here with Peacock.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. But to think that they have no affiliation with ABC or ESPN,
it's gonna be weird.
That right? Every single conference does have that. I mean, they're still going to have. Think about like College Game Day, never happening again. College Game Day is not coming to Lincoln.
Nope.
Ever, no matter what. Maybe if they're number one and
Ohio State's number 2 or Michigan.
But even then, those games are not on ESPN.
The contract, they'd hit Bama, right? But you've had this agreement and partnership with ESPN and the SEC for so long, with the SEC network, with the ACC network, that even if it was a 2:30 CBS Tier 1 right game, you'd have game day at Auburn. You'd have a game day at Alabama, right? So the flip here is, you're not going to get much love. You can't be totally ignored from a preview standpoint by ESPN, but they're not going to be doing you any favors. Absolutely not.
No. And I just wonder how that world is going to look. Because they are going to go, and now if you're the SEC, you're like, you wonder what kind of leverage that gives them with ESPN, where if they can threaten, if NBC, CBS, Fox have interest in the SEC too, is there a chance that ESPN and their ABC could get cut out? That would be incredible. I don't think that would happen.
That's the worry with college. Even though the college football playoff is going to be expanding, who's going to have the rights for the next round of college football playoffs when it expands?
Oh, that's going to be.
And it's going to be, all right, because ESPN, ABC owns it, are they going to work on getting a third and fourth SEC team in over a third or second Big Ten team?
Yeah.
That's the dynamic. So if you're Nebraska in the Big Ten, not that you're in playoff position by any means, but from a conference payday standpoint, you're hoping Fox or CBS bids. But I would think from a college football playoff standpoint, whatever's created here, this new world, right? You're going to be in position to rotate your playoffs and your championship game like the NFL has done. Kevin Warren sat down this week, and he believes that there's going to be a breakaway league, a la kind of a semi-pro deal where players are paid, first of all.
Wow.
And the Big Ten jumps up to 20. That's what he alluded to. Nicole Auerbach from The Athletic had some great info on this.
Did he mention how imminent that is?
I don't think it's a short-term, like tomorrow deal, but I think it's within the future where you're going to, because I think the Big Ten, he said, could see adding up to 20, which means, you look at Notre Dame and then the 3 squads from the Pac-12.
Oregon, Washington, Stanford.
Boom, and Notre Dame.
Yep.
And then that's your 4, and that you're set with the Big Ten.
That would be pretty sweet. Just when that's the first time I've said that out loud about what that could look like. Think about that. Add Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Notre Dame to the Big Ten.
That'd be
Not
all right.
bad.
Iowa Russ chimes in on email, chris@varsity.com. It's like, look, game day was barely previewing games outside of Ohio State and Michigan anyway.
That's a good point.
Which is very true.
Good point.
Yeah, you look at
they did come to Lincoln, though.
I know.
I mean, come on. They set up shop here. It's not like
2019.
Right. Even though Nebraska was on the struggle bus, and they have been for a while. But he's right. It's not like they were. But now they're going to be completely divorced from it. Completely.
Here's the thing, though. You've had momentum growing with the big noon kickoff and their show.
Yep.
Coach Barnett really talked about this with us this week, and the fact that, listen, you have game day isn't what it was. I mean, it's still relevant, it's still prevalent, but it's not the juggernaut it used to be.
No, nothing is, because everybody's attention is divided.
And that's right. And it's the ability here for Nebraska and a lot of Big Ten schools to get paid is wonderful, but that means you got to step your game up or be left in the dust. I mean, it's vitally important Nebraska gets off the mat and becomes a team that competes and starts winning some ball games. because you're about to enter into a whole new realm of competition with real paychecks. You've been getting fat and happy financially anyway.
Yeah.
But now you're going to have a river of about $100 million per year coming at you for a 7-year window. Think about that.
Yeah, and you're going to have to figure out what is the appropriate cut for players. You know, and the fact that a Big Ten commissioner,
you've got Tuberville and Manchin working on that congressionally.
Yeah.
That I think will kind of be your blueprint, your model for this next.
Where are those documents
setup.
at?
I don't know.
Are those at Mar-a-Lago?
They are not at Mar-a-Lago.
I'm just wondering.
They are not at Mar-a-Lago.
Where are those? The fact that you have a Big Ten commissioner or just a commissioner, period.
You need a football czar.
Well,
or a committee.
But the fact that he's saying that's happening, that there's going to players are going to get paid, and they're going to get paid via the school or something like that, is huge. We've all heard the rumors, but I haven't heard any commissioner on record saying, "Yeah, that's happening." Right? I mean, what a crazy week and sea of change for the Big Ten, and therefore Nebraska. Look, Nebraska's going to have these teams are going to be flush with cash, and when you're flush with cash, you're going to be able to get some facilities. You're going to be able to get some players. You're going to be able to do some good stuff.
You have Bryant Gumbel. It was HBO Real Sports is what I alluded to, and I was trying to place the interview. Nicole Auerbach was one who retweeted the transcript of this, but it aired last night. You and I were having a barley soda last night when it was on over your shoulder. I was watching a little bit of that. And you have Gumbel go down the list, so I need to watch that whole thing. Numbers to get in this morning can join us on Hail Varsity at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. Find us on Twitter at Schmidt_radio, at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbal, and can find the show Twitter feed at HVarsity Radio. Elijah, the stash has survived. Barrett Ruud shaved his. Yours is as thick and mean as ever. How's your Saturday morning going? I didn't mean to glaze you over with the Big Ten news before we get into Husker camp. Did you puke last night? Let me ask you that.
No pukes for me last night. Did stay up a little too late. That's simply for the fact that last year's Texas and Kansas game was on ESPN2.
Oh.
I believe it started at about midnight, and I had to catch the whole thing, so... it was funny to see that the commentators talking about Casey Thompson's hand back in that Texas and Kansas game where there's extreme close-ups and you can see all the wrapping he's got in his hand. And despite all that, he was still delivering dimes. Now, he was let down by his team in that Kansas game. Not going to pin that on Casey Thompson, especially a guy with a bum hand did about all he could. So I watched that last night. No puke and rally for Elijah Herbal last night, though. Let's see. Just went to bed a little too late. Now I'm here and ready to talk about some Husker football. It's simple as that.
It sounds like you weren't working hard enough then. That's really what that sounds like. So just for folks that connecting the dots here. So you watched Kansas and Texas, and that's the Kansas win.
That was a thrilling overtime, correct?
Yeah, and Casey Thompson had 5 touchdown passes in that game for Texas, if I'm not mistaken.
I think Washington had a couple 3 touchdowns.
That's what I was going to ask about. Like your analysis of watching Casey Thompson in a pressure-packed game, and then any takeaways. I
think you may have dropped out on me.
His show, that he's been maybe one of the bigger surprises.
Well, you dropped out on me just briefly there at the end of that question, but I think I got the heart of your question, and that's Casey Thompson. I mean, I had to remember the whole time watching it that he was doing it with his hand wrapped up, and upon seeing pictures that came out later, I think we talked about in this show, his hand looked like a balloon. So the fact that he was dropping dimes despite all that was impressive. I don't think the Nebraska offense this season is going to look all that much like Texas's last year because I don't think Nebraska has a Bijan Robinson on their roster, a running back they can just hand the ball off to and expect to get 4 or 5 yards a pop. So Casey's play last season was much more, you're going to run the ball, 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 and then boom, there's that play action deep shot where That kind of led to the 5 touchdowns, and you got a wide receiver wide open. I don't necessarily think that's all that much like what Nebraska's offense is going to look like this season. I think it's going to be much. I hope it does, but
that sounds awesome.
But
please
I
bring
think it's
that back.
Be much more about keeping Casey Thompson in rhythm, a guy that can get in a 3 or a 5-step drop, find his first read, make a clean, accurate throw, and pick up your 5-6 yards. That's my take on what this offense is going to look more like this season. But if Nebraska can develop a strong running game, which kind of comes down to the offensive line more in my opinion, because the running backs are going to be all right, and I think they'll develop a fine running game. But if it becomes a strength of the offense, I think it only opens up more and more for Casey Thompson, because a good running game is quarterback's best friend.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of synchronized vomiting along the offensive line into the defensive line's eyes, and that'll help with the run game. That could very well happen.
Well, Elijah told a glorious story yesterday about his teammate Gerald Foster hurling on a defender in high school football and then pancaked the guy after he got done doing it. He just old Gerald just wasn't feeling great for a moment, let it fly, Elijah, and then in game just mauled the guy and got up and went back to the huddle.
Yeah. And from experiences, thankfully, it was my freshman year when Gerald was a senior. I never had to go full pads Gerald Foster because I broke my ankle very early in the season. So I thank my lucky stars for that one. But I remember summer conditioning where Gerald Foster's out there leading the linemen and we're doing blocking drills with no pads on and 7 a.m. in June. And first day of summer conditioning my freshman year, I get up in line and who's across from me but Gerald Foster, and man, he was very strong as opposed to a little 14-year-old Elijah Herbal, and it was very, very scary. I remember my brother, this would have been his junior year, one of his first practices going up against JV Varsity, and he was playing nose guard, and Gerald Foster came down and cracked him, and the whole right side of his body was bruised, and that was the point where I realized, man, Division I athletes, they're a little bit different, aren't they?
That they are. Guys, let's spend a minute here on that run game and the offensive line, and we heard from Coach Raiola this week, and guys are continuing to work. That's the synopsis, and it's going to be so important to Nebraska this season, this first game, with what they get out of the offensive line and run game. And it's going to be a living, breathing thing that works to get better, but out of the gate it needs to be dependable, solid. And that's the one unit that, you can argue's a liability just because of all the new and the shifting.
And they could not protect last year.
Right. And
they were very bad at protecting last year.
Yet they still called a lot of pass plays, and you had a lot of Adrian trying to improvise to get a big play or just survive. With Whipple, it's going to be interesting to see what happens a week from today with the running game, with the options. What can he put together from a game plan standpoint that is functional with potential inconsistency on the offensive line? We all imagine the quick game when it comes to throwing.
Yeah.
But from a running standpoint, what can you lean on? What can you go with? And I think we all think you've got some options in that running back room that can help the offensive line, right? You can have a back there that can bail out an offensive line that's still trying to kind of get some solidarity with themselves as a unit. I'm
interested in seeing what Ramir Johnson looks like. He's going
to be in the slot working a linebacker, it sounds like.
Well, he calls himself a wide back. Mm-hmm. So I think you'll see him motion out quite a bit. You'll see him in the backfield. I think he'll be kind of that player that Frost has been wanting for a while.
The Dakar?
Essentially that, mm-hmm. Right? Maybe a Maurice Washington type role for him. But if you think about how Ramir ran towards the end of last season, something clicked with him where he really thought about darting through a hole mm-hmm. and being physical despite his size. You assume that carries forward to this year, and he's going to start the year like that. Now, if you start to split him out a little bit, remember he had that solid touchdown against Michigan
on
the wheel route, mm-hmm. right? So that's an interesting piece. And then I think with Anthony Grant, you have what amounts to a pro-style running back, right? And not saying the guy's going to be a first-round NFL pick. He might not even get drafted. I don't know. We got to see him. But in terms of his style, it's very much that NFL kind of style. That's not a dude that's going to fall backwards too much. He makes quick cuts. He's powerfully built. That's a big dude. He's not easy to bring down. He seems like maybe one of the more pure running backs that really isn't lacking for anything. I wouldn't say he has anything in abundance. It's not like he's 250 pounds. It's not like he's a 4'3" guy. But he's got good enough speed. He's got good enough strength. He's got good enough quickness. He's kind of got that whole package. We'll see if he can hang on to the ball. That's going to be another question with him because we haven't seen him a lot. But you at least have that pro-style guy that just strikes me as somebody that will be dependable and may be able to break a couple every now and then.
And what struck me about Grant during the limited action we saw him in the spring game and going back to his JUCO days and just watching his film is he's got the intangibles that, you struggle to teach running back. One of those things you say it can't be taught. A guy just has to have it, which is that ability to know when to put your head down and pick up your 4 or 5 yards inside, right, and when you can bounce it and move outside and try to get those 30, 40 yards and make a splash play. He knows exactly when to do that, and a lot of Husker running backs through the past couple of years haven't had that intangible, and I think that'll be a breath of fresh air if he can continue that into a regular season.
He uses his blocks well, too. Mm-hmm. And you see that going back to JUCO, where he's patient enough. He's not just going to lower his head and bull forward come hell or high water. If he's got a guy that's pulling, he will kind of ride that guard. He'll ride that center. He'll ride that tackle and then make a decision and go. So to Elijah's points about intangibles, it looks like that's what Nebraska has. Of course, he's going to need an effective offensive line in front of him to do it. And you mentioned, Chris, that is absolutely the question mark. You got an all-new coach, all-new style, an all-new offense. Got a lot of different things happening there on the offensive line, but you have a lot of returning guys. Every guy that we're talking about on the offensive line has played, I would say, a significant number of snaps to where you would call them experienced. And you haven't been able to say that about a Nebraska offensive line too often. No,
they're experienced, but they are, and Mitch said this perfectly, it's a unit that needs to be good. It's not serviceable. It's a unit that needs to be good. And, guys, we'll get to Paul Myerberg in the rewind coming up, but how does this grab you? I mean, you're going to have the option of Grant and Irvin, it sounds like.
Yep.
We'll see if we get a depth chart tomorrow about 3 o'clock.
Coaches love Irvin, and they have ever since he got on campus.
Sure. I mean, physically, yeah, and he's busted it to get back from that gruesome injury down in Norman. But this is your line. This is your outlook here with Teddy and Turner and Hickson and Bando and Benhart. Those are your 5, potentially. And how does that grab you? I mean, I think I have some comfort with Hickson because of his experience. And you know what he can do and what he can do well because he's been here. I'm excited for a guy like Bando, because he has continued to grind, and he's a 6th-year guy.
I was just going to say, 6th year.
Benhart has gotten better, it sounds like, in camp. He's got a little more confidence going. Raiola's been working with him.
He's got a top 1% tackle body in college football.
And then you have Teddy that's coming off the injury, and then Turner that's really for the first time, and he talked with us Thursday. He gets what he's going up against in grown men across the line of scrimmage in the Big Ten, but just what the grind is in camp. And he's been dinged, you know what I mean, from spring and a little bit this fall, but he's had to move inside. Elijah, you're gonna ask you a second here with give me a little bit of a profile here on Bando real quick, just because of your history with him over at Southeast before he went to IMG, but what can he bring to the line, and what do you think of this group? And Cranack, all of you follow, of course, bud. But Bando is a guy that I think is excited. He has waited his turn and continued to try and make a dent, and earn that spot.
And we were talking with Searles just a couple days ago about whether there's going to be rotation within this offensive line against Northwestern. His inkling is that, yes, we're going to see some guys in and out, and I think right guard is one of those positions where maybe we'll get a series with Latovsky coming in and playing that right guard spot. Maybe you're going to see Kevin Williams, despite the fact that he's been playing a lot of tackle this fall. I've also seen him at guard, and I think he's going to be a guy that you're rotating in and seeing what you have. So I don't think Bando is locked up that right guard spot by any means, but I do think he's going to be the guy we see first against Northwestern. And what he brings to the table is that veteran experience. He's been a guy who's played in a lot of Big Ten games. It's almost weird to see, with as much as we've seen him on the field, he's never started a game for Nebraska, but he's come in and given Nebraska some valuable downs, especially due to injury and just the offensive line not working out well like you would have expected pregame, where he's come in and played well and held his own. And he's not going to be the most physically outstanding offensive lineman, height-wise, weight-wise, strength-wise. He's not one of those physical freaks, but he's going to come in and I don't think he's going to be the guy making boneheaded mistakes. He's been playing at Nebraska for 6 seasons now, a couple different coaching staffs. He's played pretty much everywhere along the offensive line. And you talk about Donnie Raiola coming in saying, I want all my guys to know all the positions. He's a guy where Brock, I think, probably knew that already going into the season. That's the type of football player he is, where he's going to know what everyone's doing along the offensive line, and he's not going to come in and make a dumb, boneheaded error. He's going to he's not going to blow up a play because he's blocking the wrong guy, is the best way to put it. Is he the most physically imposing offensive lineman? No, but you're not going to have just silly young errors that you've seen.
There's some dependability with him.
It's not going to be those errors of blocking the wrong guy or not blocking through a whistle like you've seen from offensive lines here at Nebraska in the past couple of years.
Nebraska's offensive line is going to be massive. You know, you look at left tackle, you got Teddy Prohaska that they're listing at, 6'10" now? And he goes about 320.
Yeah.
6'10", 320. That's an NFL-sized tackle. Left guard, Turner Corcoran is going to be 6'6", 300. You got Hickson that goes 6'4", 305.
Yeah, crazy. That's your smallest guy. Trent Hickson at center at 6'4".
I know. It's going to be a massive group. And we'll see how well they can move. We'll see how that all works out. And then look at the other side. You got Benart that's 6'8", 315. I mean, it's a massive offensive line. Got all the length that you could possibly want, which should translate, you would think, with good coaching, with good athleticism, which I think they have, should translate to good protection, and then the ability to lean on a defense and wear them out. Right?
Well, it's going to come down to that Raiola mentality. Yep. Can he turn them into trained killers, right? I mean, can they be angry, big dudes that want to beat the hell out of you for several quarters? The backups, the other names. I mean, Nebraska has 10 linemen that have played quite a bit of college football. Because Kevin Williams, you could presume, is right behind Teddy at a tackle spot. Brant Banks, guy that's seen a couple of different stops at high-level programs. Piper was once a starter. Yep. Back up at center, you have the Lutoskis, the young pup, and Bando. Then Hunter Anthony from Oklahoma State, you'd assume, and at right tackle behind Benhart. So Raiola can get different groups ready. We'll dive into more. Casey Thompson was named your starting quarterback. Thoughts on that next hour. We'll hit the rewind coming up with Paul Myerberg, USA Today. We talked with Paul earlier in the week. This is pre-Big Ten, pre-puke gate, but some good analysis on what Northwestern Nebraska means this Week 0 game. A week from today, we are in Ireland. Take a shot. It's Hail Varsity Weekend presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Hey, it's Schmitty. Want to tell you about a fantastic opportunity to work for a rapidly growing company that also enjoys the benefits earned with having competitive, stable history of work over 20 years. FSC. The FSC Edge. It's a leading technology innovator serving governmental agencies. Expert services helping worldwide patent offices meet strict processing and publishing timelines while delivering exceptional quality. They support some of the world's largest patent offices throughout the U.S. and Europe. That includes the European Patent Office, the German Patent and Trademark Office, and the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. The only group of companies worldwide to provide such support to all three of these agencies. Working at FSC, you have a chance to work with fun people with great attitudes and learn about patents. You're not on the phone. You're not customer facing. It's casual dress. And the work environment, it's a new environment with over $2 million in improvements. You have access to generous benefits packages, company support for health and wellness, and you do impactful work on a national scale. Make a difference. Their team's constantly growing, and they're always looking for new people to join their mission. Check out what's available today at jobs@fsc.com.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio listen?
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Thanks for spending time at Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, getting ready for Nebraska-Northwestern in Ireland, and the AP out with their top 25. We welcome in college football writer and insider with USA Today, Paul Myerberg, with us. Paul, it's been a while, man. How we doing?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me back. We're like one full weekend away from college football, so we're feeling good.
I know. I hear the excitement in your voice, and week zeros are great for you, for me, for the fans, and that means Nebraska and Northwestern got to get it figured out. Nebraska played a week zero last year against Illinois. Before we get into the Big Red, Paul, I want to get your takeaway here with ho-hum, another AP top 25 preseason poll, and guess what? Alabama's number one again. It's just death taxes in Bama, isn't it?
Yeah, and what's so sad is that Texas didn't even get in the top 25, let alone get a first-place vote like they did in the coaches' poll.
No.
So that was really, I'm sure we are all just devastated. Yeah, there's, it's funny that, things come in threes. In college football right now, you got three programs that have really placed themselves a distance ahead of 4 through 6, let alone, 15 through 25. That's Bama, Ohio State, and Georgia. It's a really strange environment that we've developed here, at least with the on-field product. And I think this was a fear going into the end of the BCS era, that you had this homogeneity of who's competing for a national championship. We went to 4, and lo and behold, you're kind of looking at the same 3 or even 4 if you count Clemson as a bounce-back team. So everyone is chasing Bama at this point. I do think Ohio State's got just a fantastic shot to get back on top for the first time since 2014. But, obviously, if you're doing bet those 3 versus the field, I think it's a pretty safe bet that one of those 3, at this point, you would pick one of them over the rest of the field to claim the national championship.
Paul Myerberg is with us, USA Today College Football at Hail Varsity Radio. I think you're right about Ohio State. They're not that far removed from playing for the title, and it didn't go well that day against Bama. But Ohio State needs to shore up their defensive line. That was an issue when it came to folks running on them last year. Based on your insight and looking at the Buckeyes, do you think Ohio State's prone to be better to figure out a way to stop the run? I know they'll be fantastic throwing the football. I know they'll have a guy to hand it off to, and Travion, and the receiving core is just going to reload. But defensively, can they be markedly better, or do they need to be that much better than last year?
Well, they definitely need to be better to go 15-0, 14-1, and that's kind of the fine line that we kind of referenced a moment ago. Ohio State's going to outscore, out-athlete 90% of their schedule. Schematically, you combine those things together, they should outclass 100% of their Big Ten schedule if all things go according to plan. But when you get into those semis and championship game, if you're not running at full tilt both sides of the ball, you're going to get overrun, as we saw 2 years ago when they played Bama. I do like the fact that you have a coach in Jim Knowles who came over from Oklahoma State who has a proven track record over his career of finding out ways to defend the run. I understand it's a different beast when you're in the Big 12 defending against, a more, I don't want to say finesse, but maybe a little bit of a less physical or traditional running game than you might see in the Big 12. But I do believe they're going to devote resources to winning on first down and letting their athletes on the edge and on the outside kind of win battles on 3rd and 7+. So I'm a big fan of Ohio State. This is not like hedging my bets at all. I think it's safe to say Ohio State's the class of the Big Ten. But, yeah, I mean, if they're top 40 on defense. They're clearly a better team than last year. I don't know if they're a national championship team, but if they're a top 25 defense, they're getting off the field on third down. I think they're very, very frightening because, like you said, they lost 2 first-round receivers to the draft, and they're not going to miss a beat. They're just not. They're going to be the best offense in the Big Ten by a margin. So Ohio State is a beast. If you catch them on a good day, maybe you can pull off an upset if you're an underrated Big Ten team, but that's asking a lot. I think they are head and shoulders at this point ahead of the rest of the conference.
Paul Myerberg with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Paul, you said the top 3 is pretty unexpected, but I'd go as far as to say the top 5 when you add in Clemson and Notre Dame. And Notre Dame's a team I want to focus on here for just a second. We've talked about them a lot, not for what's going on the field for Notre Dame, but off the field potential conference realignment. When you look at that Notre Dame squad this year, do you think they can keep it going even after losing their head coach and Brian Kelly?
Yeah, it's interesting to think about. I mean, they do start off against the Buckeyes, and that's, for better or worse, we tend to really focus on first impressions. We look back to a guy like Willie Taggart at Florida State as someone who really flopped against Virginia Tech in prime time on Labor Day, and he never recovered. Marcus Freeman is a different animal. It's a different program. He has a different sort of leash, but nonetheless, it's 40-10 on week 1. That's a stench that might last for a while. I think Notre Dame is a good football team. I have questions about their quarterback play. What I do like, however, is, believe it or not, I love the change in voice. Not that it got tired under Brian Kelly, because they had really kind of peaked these last couple of years, but sometimes a younger guy like Marcus Freeman, you've seen it in recruiting, you've seen it in their team energy when you do get a chance to see him. Sometimes that can really pay off, at least in the immediate sense. So Notre Dame, yeah, for sure. I think they've earned that number 5 spot. You could have put a few other teams there, but Notre Dame, I can't really argue with that. I think they're very, very, very good. I think they'll lose week 1, but clearly a team that can get to a New Year's 6 or maybe backdoor their way into the top 4 if they run the table from there.
Paul Myerberg with us, USA Today College Football at Paul Myerberg on Twitter. Paul, going to shift over to Nebraska, and 3-9 a year ago. You have wait and see in this state for a better season. You have an easier schedule to navigate if you're Scott Frost. You made changes, and we all think they may be for the better here in a year, but you need to do something to see a second year with this staff. What's your take on the Huskers here for 2022?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it in a vacuum, guys, I do think you see a reason why you can have a little bit of optimism. Clearly, to me, the Scott Frost experiment of I want to run the offense but also run the program was a bad fit. I mean, I don't know if it's a bad fit for his personality, but certainly was a bad fit from an overarching, keep your finger in every single pie kind of approach. So I do like bringing in a veteran like Whipple. As much as any team in the country, I think they will see a really profound benefit from the transfer portal and from maybe a few first-year recruits. Certainly that JUCO running back seems like a special guy. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we don't really live in a vacuum, as Nebraska fans know all too well. And the reality of the situation is this is not a program on an upward trajectory. It's a program that needs to prove itself every single day. And to be quite fair, 4 years, 5 years in, I want to see them beat Northwestern 40-14, and then maybe we can talk about whether this team is for real. Because if you are for real, a Northwestern team that was just as bad as Nebraska last year, if not worse, with enormous question marks personnel-wise, almost across the board, Nebraska needs to take care of business that week. So let's talk on the 28th maybe. For right now, I'm not even cautiously optimistic. I'm a little bit pessimistic based on what we've seen. But I have to admit, it's August 15th. This is a team with potentially be an 8-win team. I think they finish up about 7-5, but clearly based off the schedule, as you mentioned, maybe 7-2 going into November, because I think that's possible. And if they're in that place in November, I might have the math wrong, 6-2 or 7-1. It could be a real breakthrough year. But no coach in the country, nobody in the country needs a breakthrough year more than Scott Frost, because we don't know what the metric is, because it's all kind of vague for what he needs to do to come back. But I don't know if 7-5 will do it. I think 9-3 definitely does it, but 7-5 will kind of leave him maybe on the fence.
What do you think of Casey Thompson? You've seen a lot of college football. I know the guy had a mangled thumb, and he still was good enough to gut it out for 10 games against Texas. Does a healthy Casey Thompson jump the Nebraska offense?
Yeah, I think so. And look, like I'm like the rest of you guys, I didn't really know the severity of that injury until a couple days ago. I think I read a story in one of your local papers about how bad that injury was. Nebraska's had a tough quarterback the last 4 years. Toughness alone is not going to get you to a Rose Bowl or get you to a conference championship game, but careful football, avoid turnovers on third down, keep the offense running. I think Casey Thompson can very well be an upgrade. And look, I think they've got 2 QBs on the roster who can play at a Power 5 level at a pretty high level on Thompson and Purdy. I mean, a lot of programs were sniffing around Purdy, and not just small-time guys. I think a lot of programs are interested in a guy with his eligibility. So I like the quarterback situation. I think the important thing for Casey Thompson is not so much, hey, do I get this offense? Do I understand the scheme? Can I move the sticks? It's about, breaking into a locker room that had played with the same guy for 4 years, a veteran guy who played through injuries, had a lot of friends, had a lot of backers. So he's got to win that locker room. I honestly, I'm not educated enough to say that he has or hasn't. But to me, that's for any first-year quarterback who's kind of assigned a starting role, the day they step on campus. You got to win over your guys. So not to say that's going to stop Nebraska, but it'd be great to see him step on the field on August 27th and clearly have the command of that huddle, command of that locker room.
Paul, let's talk about August 27th for a second. What's your take on the game being in Dublin? What kind of national intrigue does this have? And, we've been talking about it here locally for, feels like 6 months now. Just it's weird, but we're all pretty excited for it to have the Huskers on a national stage week 0 yet again. What's the national intrigue like for this game, and what kind of national pull does Nebraska have?
Yeah, I tried to go to this game. I pitched it in an email to my boss. I just got back a ha response. So I think unfortunately, I'm not going to be in Dublin for this one. I would have loved to be there. The good news is, and maybe not great news for college football fans, but good news for Nebraska, it's not the best week 0 slate. We've had much better games in the past in those week 0 slots. So to me, it's no doubt the game of the day. It's in 12:30, whatever time it is in Dublin, like 5-6 hours later, whatever the time change is. It's the game of the day. It's a statement opportunity for Nebraska. At the same time, with opportunity comes the potential for chaos. If they lose 17-14, they're up 14-0 in the fourth quarter, the floodgates will open, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty for Scott Frost in this program. So it's a must-win game. I do think they're going to have the eyes of the country on them. So it's a great chance, if they really are a different team and they really believe they are, to show people that fact. And they should. If they get it done and they have their heads on straight, this is a 14 to 17-point win. I'm just not very high on Northwestern this year.
Paul Myerberg with us, college football insider, writer, USA Today at Paul Myerberg. Give him a follow. Great stuff year after year with college football. Paul, it was awesome to get caught up again. We'll do this soon, and thanks for a few minutes today.
Yeah, for sure, guys. Talk to you soon.
All right. Like what you hear, high-quality radio and podcast, just part of what we do at Hail Varsity. Hey, it's Chris Schmidt with Hail Varsity Radio, and I wanted to offer listeners of the Hail Varsity Radio Show podcast $10 off the price of an annual subscription. That means that you can get everything we do. 10 issues of our monthly magazine, our annual football yearbook, and all the premium content we produce at HailVarsity.com. Just go to HailVarsity.com/subscribe and enter in the promo code GBR for $10 off a full year of Hail Varsity. That's HailVarsity.com/subscribe, promo code GBR.
This segment is presented by Union Bank and Trust.
The Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Strap yourselves in. Here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt.
Y'all don't even know he was a virgin until he's 28, and now, roll tide.
And Mark Cranack.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. It's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Mark Cranack, Elijah Herbal, Brandon Vogel from his football office to kick off Hour 2. A week from today, we are in Dublin. Mary Cobbler is our venue, as we'll be getting you sent for Nebraska and Northwestern live in Dublin. We're streaming right now, Hour 2 of the weekend, so if you got your mobile device out, we are on Facebook Live, ESPN Lincoln, or the ESPN Lincoln Twitter handle. We're in Casa de Cranack. Behind him is a glorious ping pong table. And are you going to move out of the way, Cranack? I'm at the Dr. Evil table here. It's pretty sweet. And, we were talking all sorts of things this week with Nebraska. What I need to get to the bottom of, though, with Brandon Vogel, managing editor, HailVarsity.com and magazine, author with John Cook, Dream Like a Champion. Vogues, did you ever get into any puke conversations with John Cook, or when you really nail a column and you worked hard at it? Was that a 5 puke paragraph? I mean, talk to me here.
I have a strong, and have since I was a child, a very strong aversion to vomiting. So I have trained myself to avoid it at all costs. I can probably count on one hand the number of times that had to happen. So not so much for me with the column writing. It did come up a time or two, I think, in the preparation of Dream Like a Champion with Coach Cook. They have something called the trash can drill. And there's a trash can on hand for a reason. So when, something wasn't going right, or somebody kind of needed welcome to this level of volleyball moment, they got put in the trash can, so to speak. So I do recall that. That's about as much vomit anecdotes as I have, I think.
Well, thank you. And if you're eating breakfast, we're going to apologize. But so how did the trash can topic come up with Coach Cook?
I'm struggling to remember exactly off the top of my head now. I mean, it's something that's, pretty, I think, well known amongst the volleyball team itself of like, hey, this is kind of a brutal drill. And the thing about it is like, I can't remember what metrics they have to hit, but like you basically stay in it until you can get this done. So that's how it came up. And I can't remember what team it was we were talking about, but one of a fairly recent vintage.
Brandon Vogel is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. We'll be in Dublin. When do you take off? Are you set to go? Do you got any international travel packing tips or otherwise for the folks that might be going?
The only tip I haven't been abroad in 5 years, but I'm trying to keep it super simple, and definitely carry on in personal items, so I don't have to worry about my bag living somewhere without me for the entire stretch that we're there. But otherwise, I think that's pretty easy. I went to Ireland 20 years ago, and it seemed pretty simple then. Travel industry is much different now. That's my only big concern. We've got a narrow window where everything works just perfectly, and honestly, I've got some trepidation about that, but we'll see. I take off on Tuesday, scheduled to arrive first thing Wednesday morning. Deputy Editor Erin Sorensen arrived early this morning, so she is already over there. She said on her flight, an informal head count included about 50 Husker fans and one Northwestern fan. And that was a flight out of Chicago. So if Nebraska can just maintain a 50-1 advantage on every flight that leaves for Dublin between now and Saturday, I think it'll look like a lot of Husker road games that Northwestern do anyway.
Brandon Vogel's with us here. Go for it, Mark, please. Be my guest.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I real quick, I would not be surprised if Nebraska fans exceed. The number you keep is 10,000. And it reminds me of Colorado 2019, I believe that was, where, look, everybody was like, you'll get 15,000, you'll get 20,000, and Nebraska took it over. It was
they did. There was no more Coors left, and that was partially due to overtime, partially due to thirst.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see 15-20 there. We'll see. Sorry, Elijah, I had to cut you off.
Yeah, you've got to go back to the 15-20, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking.
Brandon, I want to get your take real quick on if you have any advice for passing the time during a flight like that. I mean, some people out there are going to hop on the in-flight entertainment and play blackjack against the gentleman in 16C. Very cool feature. That doesn't strike me as a you thing, though. Are you a book reader? Are you going to download some shows off Netflix? What's your plan for the flight?
Yeah, I'll probably download a movie or two, and then I'll check to see what in-flight entertainment has or has available in terms of movies specifically. Watched a couple of good ones during travel this summer that I otherwise wouldn't have had access to. So we'll see there. And then I've been trying to plan out what book it is that I need for this voyage. Still, it's going to be a game time decision. I've got a number of candidates, but definitely always have a book with me as well.
Well, anyone going over? If you need a book, may I recommend John Cook, Dream Like a Champion?
There you go.
Look at that. Man, Elijah Herbal, you're doing me proud here. I got to ask you, we'll get to football and Casey Thompson and captains and black shirts and puking, and we'll get to all of that stuff here shortly, but just to put an end to the travel, what's your top 2 Husker draft pick YouTube games? All right, you got 10 hours to kill. What game are you going to rewatch on YouTube? What Husker classic are you going to check out?
Really good question. Man, there's a lot. I mean, the 2009 game, even though it's painful, is never gonna do you wrong. Nebraska, Texas, of course. I can tell you because I watched about half of it the other day. If you don't want a Nebraska game, the 1989 Pitt-Rutgers game in Dublin is available on YouTube with commercials, which is nice. You get a trip back to 1989. So I was watching that for a little bit yesterday. That's out there. Let's see. That 2014 Miami game, last I checked, this was a couple years ago, was available. That one's a ton of fun as well. So that's 2 to get you started, plus the wild card of, everybody needs to watch a little Rutgers football from 1989.
Look at you diving deep. I appreciate that. Brandon Vogel with us. Vogues, you had Coach Frost name Casey Thompson the starter. Not a huge shock, but all 3 can play. And how do they get Casey ready for a week from today? We were talking about this a little bit yesterday. So what are you asking? I asked Jacob this, and I'm interested in your opinion with the script. We've not seen much of Casey outside of what we saw on ESPN and Fox wearing burnt orange a year ago. So his fit with Whipple and how that rolls out to get off to a good start a week from today.
Yeah. Well, speaking of YouTube, some enterprising Texas fan put every one of Casey Thompson's snaps on about a 40-minute video, so you can get that one if you need in-flight entertainment. That's not a bad place to start. I think because it's a first game, this would be true no matter where it's played. It's probably a little extra true given the circumstances here. I think you try to keep things pretty manageable. I think you try to go through the plays. I mean, Whipple's talked about a lot about, like, he'll go to his quarterbacks and say, hey, what are you comfortable with? So you lean pretty heavily on those. I think you dial up a couple of shots that Northwestern probably couldn't be prepared for and see how those go. But for the most part, I expect it to be pretty kind of calm and controlled. And, this has been the case for Nebraska for most of the past 4 seasons. Like, try to take control of a game early. Things go so much better when you do that. And I would expect that goal to be reflected a little bit in how Nebraska comes out offensively in particular.
Brandon Vogel's with us here, a Saturday morning edition of Hail Varsity Radio. And Brandon, I like that last point. Quickly, just how big do you think in the grand scheme of a season could an opening drive touchdown be for Nebraska? If they take the ball, drive the ball 80 yards, and go up 7-0 against Northwestern, I mean, it seems like something small, but with what we've seen in the past couple of years, it could be just absolutely monumental in the grand scheme of the entire season.
Yeah, I think it could be. I mean, we heard that basically at this point last year, almost 51 weeks or 53 weeks ago or away. They talked about the start against Illinois and how that didn't go well. And, one of the big kind of stories of Nebraska, and I've talked about it a lot, I think, is just they're constantly playing uphill because they don't get those opening drives where they come out and put points on the board, much less a touchdown. So to come out and have your opening drive, like, work as well as like your dream scenario, like everything we called mostly worked. We went down the field. Yes, Northwestern probably didn't have an idea what like 4 of these plays were going to be. So it might be a little bit of a false positive to a degree there, but that's okay. It's still a positive for Nebraska and for a team that has struggled to do that so much in the past. But we have also seen have a tendency to things kind of fall apart pretty quickly. You look back at kind of the one-score games a year ago, that's certainly been the case. Just getting that little bit of, hey, like we went out and did what we wanted to do would be pretty big.
On the Scott Frost radio show this week, he kind of went position by position and gave his breakdown there. And in true Scott Frost form, he's consistent that he's always very praiseworthy of his team. And if you're just listening to that show alone, this is a playoff team, right? He's really bullish on every single position. But if you read between the lines a little bit, Brandon, where do you think, position group-wise, there's legitimate cause for concern or at least intrigue?
Yeah, I would say the top three are probably in some order. O-line, like the talent level there, but just haven't seen enough kind of consistent results in recent seasons. Wide receiver remains mostly a mystery to me, and that can be okay. You know, you'd love to have a returning all-conference wide receiver. Every team would, but you know, the thing with the passing game is like if you've got guys that can play and do it consistently, like somebody's going to catch those passes. They're going to throw them. So it's just one of those where it's hard to identify who even maybe their top 2 or 3 might be at that group. And then there are questions on the defensive line, how quickly those transfers are ready to go, what you're getting from some guys kind of stepping into roles that have been on campus for a while, and Nash Hutmacher and Colton Feast. So Ty Robinson's really your only known quote unquote on that in that position group. So those are the 3 big ones, I think. And it includes both lines, which is a pretty big deal in football in general, but particularly in the Big Ten.
Vogues will probably hit on this more in a week because you are going to have a pint with me at the Mary Cobbler. Now we're gonna put you on the spot here this morning.
Thursday.
Okay.
Thursday would be a great day to go if you don't have plans already, Brandon.
So
Thursday afternoons, evening.
So
food and drink.
Brandon Vogel's like, let me check my schedule. But when we talk about concern and the wide receivers, fair point with just those new faces and new names, I want to go to the captains, okay, because that's on the to-do list presumably today along with the black shirts. And who are some of the captain candidates for you? Can one of those come out of the wide receiver room? It's not necessarily typical that you get a wide receiver that's a captain, but you've got arguably some of your best players in that room, your best talent. And if you have the top talent that is also your leader, that's what you hear a lot of coaches say they dream of. Who are the names you're looking at here when we find out who's elected, who's selected?
I mean, I think Garrett Nelson is a lock. He's been taken off the board. Nobody was betting on it because the odds were too much in the favor. You had to put up too much money to win too little on Garrett Nelson. So I think he's in. There's a ton of candidates on defense. You know, assuming Nebraska goes 2-2 again. Where it gets interesting is the offensive side. I would be surprised if Travis Vokalek wasn't one of those players. So doesn't quite check the wide receiver box, but I think that's about as close as you're going to get, because then you are looking at transfers at wide receiver, plus some guys who are still waiting to make their impact at Nebraska. That said, you know, a player like Alante Brown might be a bit of a wild card there. He's been consistently mentioned since the first time Mickey Joseph spoke as a member of Nebraska's coaching staff. So I could see somebody like that, maybe somebody in the running back room. And, you know, you can never count out just the quarterback in general, which would be, in the case, you know, a first-year player at Nebraska, of course. So, yeah, that second offense spot is really a wild card and can kind of be intriguing. You know, I expect to hear – well, we know the captains are being announced at the event this evening at Memorial Stadium, so we'll find out in a couple of hours.
Yeah,
Brandon, go for it, Mark.
And I'm curious who you got, Elijah. But yeah, defensively, there's no question. Garrett Nelson. Offensively, Travis Vokalek. Those guys seem like locks. I think also defensively, Luke Reimer has a big shot. Offensively, I got either Alante or Ramir. Who you got, Elijah?
Ramir seems like a good bet here just because of what he's doing on special teams and finding a way to get on the field doing the dirty work. That the coaches have been really high on him through fall camp. And I guess this is a captainship that's voted on by your peers, so that's a part of it as well. But Ramir, a lot of good things coming out of him about fall camp, about how he's putting team above self, and that makes me think of a good quality within a captain.
Yep.
You know, I think you have your Nebraskan that's on the line, so Garrett is good to go there. I think you have Quentin Newsome as an option, shot. Right? Because you need someone in that secondary potentially but I like Reimer a lot.
That's what I'm saying. I
really like Reimer offensively. Maybe it's Corcoran. Because I would like an offense, but you need to be able to do more on the field, and it's not that he can. He's not played a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah. So Vokalek, and I think Vokalek, Ramir, Nelson, and Newsome. There's your four.
That'd be good.
What's the casino Casa de Vogel say about that? What are the odds on
I
that?
probably, at Brandon's Sportsbook, we're offering attractive odds on Ty Robinson. And if I weren't prevented from betting at my own Sportsbook, I'd throw a little on there. You're probably talking like 8-1. So, you throw a 10 spot or 20 spot on that, come away with dinner for the night.
Well, we're sitting here like trying to match it, like, you got to have a guy from the secondary, you got to have a guy from the offense line, and this is voted on by the team. I don't think that's how the team is thinking about it. I think they're probably picking the four guys within the team that
sure.
they listen to and are actually leaders within the program. So for as much thought as we put into it, we might be putting more thought into it than the team actually is.
Yeah. Very fair. Yeah. Vogues, real quick thoughts on Northwestern here. What is scaring you about the Wildcats a week from today?
Yeah, so they've got maybe the best left tackle in college football entering the season, and they've got a really good defensive end as well. In fact, looking at how much there is to sort out for Nebraska on both lines, I think it's fair to say they've got the top two players in this game at those two respective spots. So that has the potential to get interesting. Got a couple of good running backs. Cam Porter's coming off of an injury. Pat Fitzgerald has said he is content to kind of gradually work him in. So we'll see how much he's ready to go right away in week 0. But their leading rusher from a year ago, Evan Hull, rushed for over 1,000 yards. So I think it'll be pretty clear offensively. That's what Northwestern will hope to do. Run behind Skoronski, the left tackle, with two pretty good running backs, keep things manageable for quarterback Ryan Helinski. I mean, like a lot of Northwestern teams, I don't look at the roster and say who scares you on the outside. So that's a pretty big question mark. And also the defense really took a bigger step back than I think was even fair, or what I even anticipated for a team that lost a ton of returning production going into last season. So they've got a little to work back from there, but kind of have a really good all conference caliber player at all three levels. So Northwestern's in the mix with where they typically are on their every other year schedule. They're starting lower, I think, than they do typically in the past, but if they go on a run this year, it wouldn't shock me at all. I wouldn't say it's probable, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Brandon Vogel, hey, quickly, the red-white game for volleyball is tonight. A lot of stuff I'm looking for in this one. One of them being, does Nebraska transition to more of an offensive team? I feel like they have that firepower and that potential to, really highlight a couple finishers. Is Kinsey Knuckles realistically? Cook mentioned it on his radio show that they're trying her out in the front row. I mean, she was a libero. She's 5'8". Supposedly she can touch rim. Do you think she's a legitimate option there?
I think so. I think Cook doesn't usually fly a bunch of false flags with those sorts of things. So I wouldn't be surprised if we got a pretty solid look at it, maybe starting tonight, but even through non-conference play to see what she can do. And, she's been a player who's consistently mentioned as just uber athletic. And we obviously have seen that in the back row. It becomes a little strange. Like, we're used to volleyball being dominated by, players that are 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", or taller in the case of some schools. But athleticism still translates. So I wouldn't be shocked there. I'll be real interested to watch the middle blockers tonight. And then also just to see, it's an inter-squad scrimmage, so things will be a little bit different. But, let's see where Nicklin Hames fits into this whole thing. So it'll be an interesting night for Nebraska volleyball.
I think the most impressive thing there, though, is she can touch rim. Can anyone in this radio broadcast, quick straw poll, can any of us touch rim?
In my best days, I could touch the bottom bracket part.
I could get net,
Yeah.
But, dude, you're 6'7".
Can't touch rim. No hops, dude. No hops whatsoever.
Well, look.
By next week, Elijah's going to be 6'9".
Look, this is preseason number 1, Nebraska volleyball. And
no, I know. They're incredible.
And then I want to see Kennedy Orr, how she handles an offense for an entire match. I don't get the sense that Cook is super pleased with her yet. I don't know if it's a motivational thing or what. Brandon, but are you picking up on that too? I don't think he's super high on her at this moment.
Yeah, it's, having Hames, it's kind of like, okay, we set this up for you. Nicklin made the decision she made. So it's go time. I think it could be at this stage still a little bit motivational. I mean, everyone raves about how good of a player she is. The difference with Cook is he knows what kind of setter you need to, basically win the Big Ten and win a national championship potentially. And she's still a first-year setter. She's still coming off a pretty big injury, going into her first season a year ago. So I think that's all in play here. So it'll be interesting to get a look with her. She's taller than Nebraska setters have been recently, which has the potential to get pretty interesting. But yeah, there's still some ground to cover, I think, with Nebraska at that position.
Yeah. Brandon Vogel with us, Hail Varsity Weekend Edition at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogue's off to Dublin this week. We'll join him later in the week. Vogue's, take care. We'll check in with you across the pond. Thanks so much for this morning.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Brandon.
There he is, Brandon Vogel from his football office. Yep. Weekend edition continues on. A quick timeout. The Iron Horse, Gary Sharp, will be with us. He had a great call last night with Bell West and Prep, a thriller to get week 0 kicked off. And the week that's been with Nebraska football camp, Coach Frost and some players tomorrow at Memorial Stadium before they head out. Weekend edition Hail Varsity continues, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Hey, Storm Chasers fans. Your favorite baseball team is back at home August 23rd through the 28th when they take on the Rail Riders. It's a jam-packed series that includes a $1 beer night, Friday fireworks, a fun-filled Saturday with music by Lucas Minor, and craft specials on Nebraska Brewing Company. And how about Imaginary Friend Day on Sunday? Stevie, you hear that? No, Stevie, stop. This is my mic. Sorry, folks. Stevie gets excited sometimes. Hey, hold on to that excitement and channel it on August 28th at 2:05. Sound good? All right. Fans, get your tickets now before it's too late. We'll see you soon.
Glad to have you back.
Yes, sir. You heard me right.
Here are the guys, Schmidt and Kranak.
Well, Hector, here's the game plan. You're going to bring us 2 absolute martinis. You know how I like them, straight up. And then precisely 7.5 minutes after that, you're going to bring us 2 more. Then 2 more after that every 5 minutes until one of us passes out.
Excellent strategy, sir.
Well, no martinis this morning, weekend edition. It's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Can we get Bloody Marys over in Dublin?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they'll have those.
Okay, I'm just...
Yeah, definitely.
We won't be frowned upon because a week from today will be on over there at 1 o'clock, I think, right?
Yeah, it'll be 1 o'clock. So we'll be on at our normal time here on Saturday mornings.
Yes.
Here in the States.
From Dublin, from the Mary Cobbler.
From the Mary Cobbler, 1 o'clock. That's about when stuff gets cracking there. The kickoff is at 5:30 local time in Dublin.
Yes.
11:30 here. Will be, a football throw away from the stadium.
A good punt. Not a bad punt.
Yeah.
A good punt away from the stadium.
Won't be too far away, and so we'll have you covered same time as now next week, and then after the game too, probably within a half hour or so. Elijah's going to kick things off on the post-game show, but then we'll have a live check-in from Dublin. This is assuming that we can get through all the weird privacy internet rules that happen in Dublin. There's a little bit of nervousness about our technical setup, but we are going to endeavor to have that all sorted out on Thursday.
The old data plan has been ramped up and amped up.
I think Chris knows what a VPN is.
I've tried to explain it to him one time, and he was a little bit lost.
Exactly. We may have to do that. I'm going to look into that. That's actually a really good call-out.
Schmidt and Tech are no bueno. We welcome in the Iron Horse. Gary Sharp with us. Sharpie, can you help me out with my tech problems? How are you?
What was that you said?
I was actually really worried for a second. I was like, what the hell's going on right now?
Brother, it's a week. You excited?
You know what? It's it seems like at times, like yesterday, camp has gone on forever. And at other times, it's like, whoa, all of a sudden, it's week 0 of high school football last night, and a week from today is the start of the season. And it seems like we were just talking about the spring game, but it's here. I will say this. After this past week, all the good and the bad that was involved around Nebraska's football camp, God, we need football. God, we need a game. I mean, we're to the point where we don't like each other, just like the players. We're fighting with each other. Everybody needs a game, and we're just a week away before we get that game.
Gary Sharp is with us on Hail Varsity Radio. You heard Scott Frost talk about his team this week on his weekly radio show where he went position by position. He's bullish on all of them, of course. Gary, where do you think it's legitimate that he should – because he's excited about every position group, and he always is. Where do you think that's legitimate and actually well-founded? Because, there's no way that all of them are going to be fantastic, we don't think.
No, okay,
Which one do you think he legitimately is bullish on and he's justified in believing that?
Running backs on the offensive side of the ball. I think that's a really good room where there's a lot of competition and guys are making each other better, and it's a well-coached room where even if your frontline guys aren't outstanding, you've got A.J. Allen that is coming, guys. I don't know when he's going to arrive, but he has had a really good last 2 weeks, and he looks like, wow, that's what a Nebraska running back should look like. So I think the running back room is in really good shape, and I actually think that's going to be a strength of Nebraska is running the football with those running backs. Now, on the other side of the ball, how can you not be excited about your edge rushers? I think you've got some talent there. You've got some guys that have played some football that are really, really good. And then I think you like your inside linebackers. Now, I don't think you like your depth behind your inside linebackers, but you like those two guys. And then I think there's a growing belief in your secondary has come away. I will tell you, one of the bigger developments in fall camp is that Tommy Hill has arrived. We saw him in the spring, and you're thinking, okay, this guy's probably going to start. But, man, I was a little bit underwhelmed in the spring. His head was spinning. But he has had a fantastic camp, and he has some dog in him. That's a word that Travis Fisher likes to use. That Tommy Hill has done a good job of solidifying that spot. So I think in the back end there's a growing belief that you like that area with your quarterbacks and your safety. You like your edge rushers. You like your running backs. Outside of that, I think I like, but I don't love other position groups. And then there are, of course, I believe the line of scrimmage, offensive line, and interior defensive line. You go, hold on, let's just be functional.
Now, Gary, for the type of individual out there, the casual Husker fan who, a week out of Dublin is scrolling through the podcasts out there and finds Hail Varsity Radio and goes, you know what, I'd love to get a little preview here before this game. Who's a potential breakout candidate among the guys that may be a little unheralded among casual Husker fans that could have a huge game against Northwestern and could really make a name for themselves among the Husker faithful?
Oh, a huge game against Northwestern. gosh, the people would not know. Maybe one of the backup tight ends. I will tell you, I'm going to stick with this. Travis Vokalek. So people know Travis Vokalek, but Travis Vokalek kind of played a little bit in the shadow of Austin Allen last year. Travis Vokalek has had a really good fall. He's going to be named one of the captains today, by the way. All three guys that went to Indianapolis, I believe, will be captains, and then there will be another player that will be the fourth captain. But Travis Vokalek has been a thorn in the side of the defense during fall camp. And I think even though we know him, Elijah, he'll be a guy that will slide to the forefront. And I think in the passing game, where I still have a little trepidation about the wide receivers, I think a guy like Travis Vokalek will be used heavily next Saturday.
Gary Sharp is with us on Hail Varsity Radio, getting set for Nebraska-Northwestern, 1 week away. Kind of crazy to say that out loud. I want to go back to edge rusher. And am I crazy in thinking that Caleb Tanner could actually be the breakout guy? Not Garrett, not O'Shawn, but Caleb Tanner. Is there any validity in that?
Well, go back, Mark, 2 years ago, and we wondered about Caleb Tanner. I mean, he has all the look of, length, speed.
1 in a million body.
Yeah. And then he really struggled 2 years ago. And then last year, I thought quietly, Caleb Tanner had his best year as a Husker, and he got better as the season went along. My only thing that stops me from going all in on what you're saying was last year the ceiling for Caleb Tanner. And if he gives that to you again this year, is that okay? Which you could say, yeah, but you would think that he came back for a reason to make that jump. But I could see that. You could convince me because he has some help on the other side where, you might have to pay a little bit more attention to the side opposite of Caleb Tanner. So maybe that benefits Caleb Tanner. But he had a really good year last year. If he can at least maintain where he was last year, that's a bonus for Nebraska. But I think we're Mark, I think you and I might be vibing here, where he came back not to be like he was in 21, but to make a jump in 22, where people around the league are talking about him. And defensive or offensive coordinators or offensive line coaches at opposing teams, when they flip on the film, they have to account for number 2.
Gary Sharp's with us here, Hail Varsity Radio Weekend. Sharpie, I want to go to quarterback, and Casey Thompson named the starter. What's that mean for this offense, and what do you envision the ask of Casey Thompson in this offense from Coach Whipple?
Don't have the warts that Adrian Martinez had. I will tell you from fall camp and the people I talked to that were at both scrimmages and were there the entire time, Chubba Purdy had a good fall camp, but Chubba Purdy turns the ball over. What was the problem last year at quarterback? Turning the ball over. Casey Thompson hasn't turned the ball over. Now, Casey gets a little bit of a reset because he's got a brand-new phone. And how does that affect him? But what they're going to ask Casey Thompson to do is to play smart, efficient football. I think Nebraska will run the ball a lot because I think right now that is their strength. I don't think a straight drop back is advisable for Nebraska because I think that offensive line as a whole has trouble pass blocking. But when they ask Casey Thompson to throw, I think you're going to see a high percentage of intermediate passes where he can just play pitch and catch, and that's what they want. They really kind of wanted that out of Adrian, and that was not his strength. I think Adrian throws a more consistent, deeper ball than Casey Thompson does, but I think in this offense, to get guys in space, I think Casey will be better at the simple just pitch and catch and then have wide receivers or tight ends or running backs run after the catch. They're not asking him to be Superman, guys. They're asking him just to be very efficient, get guys lined up, get in and out of the huddle, get the offense moving down the field, and then make smart plays in the red zone. Use your experience. You played a lot of football. Don't shoot yourself in the foot because we're going to play to your strengths. We're not going to make you do something that you can't do.
Gary Sharp with us on Hail Varsity Radio. Gary, you've been pretty consistent with this. You really think that this is a unit that is going to lean on the running game? Do you think that Whipple and Frost will be patient enough to stick with it? Like, is it something that you think they will legitimately stick to and just impose?
Do you want to win a football game? Guys, I'm really concerned about the offensive line and that defensive line. I can't be sitting here a week before the season and you only have 5 that you're comfortable with on the offensive line. You got to play 12 football games. And one of those offensive linemen yeah, is probably going to be a Sunday guy eventually in Teddy Prohaska. But remember, he's coming back from a knee injury, and you're going to ask him to play a lot of football over the course of 4 straight weeks to begin the season. I'm not comfortable with that offensive line at all. Even with Turner Corcoran moving to a no position where he might be more comfortable there, kind of the Zach Sterup. But I just think in pass pro, everything you've heard is 2 major scrimmages. They've really struggled. So let's play to their strengths. Can they run block, and can we do enough with better running backs who see holes, get to holes, follow their assignments, follow their blockers, are able to bounce it outside if need be, not unnecessarily, that's what we're going to do. And I think you have to do that until guys up front have proven that they can give your quarterback time. I also factor into the passing game as part of this question. Man, I'm a little hesitant on the wide receivers. We're asking Trey Palmer now to be a true number 1 as a wide receiver. There's the great unknown about Omar Manning in availability during a game, during the week. What's going to happen there? So I'm kind of cooled a little bit on the wide receivers because it hasn't been a comfortable camp to me. And looking at who's going to be the wide receivers, I mean, maybe one of the better stories in that room is the development of Marcus Washington, where you went from okay to Marcus Washington as wide receiver number 2. But to your original question, I think the strength will be running the football, and if you want to win, you're going to stick to the run. And I believe Nebraska will do that. I don't think in the first game where you got to, your whole goal is to win by at least 1 point. You can't be, you got to be a little bit greedy, but I think you got to play really, really smart and play to your strengths. And look we have no idea if Northwestern has fixed their major hole last year, and that was stopping the run. They couldn't stop the 4 of us running the football last year. Did they fix that in the offseason? Well, best way to find out is start the game and pound it at them and develop an identity on the ground. And I think Nebraska will do that next Saturday.
Gary, maybe I'm getting too specific here, but when you talk about your sources and the 2 scrimmages and what didn't happen for the offensive line for Nebraska, and that's protection and pass pro. Was that the defense sending the kitchen sink, or was it the dreaded just a 4-man rush got home?
Not, they didn't do anything fancy, and
okay.
that's
that
why I go.
Says enough right there.
So that's why I go. Whoa, they've got to work as a 5-some, and until that's taken care of, until that area becomes, I don't know if it'll be a strength, can it be functional? Then I think that's a worry. I think that's definitely a worry. But you're not going to find out until you play a real game. But I'm sure that Northwestern will test that offensive line when Nebraska tries to throw, and they'll mix it up a little bit. But it hasn't been, Chenander's defense during the scrimmages hasn't been all wacky and running different stunts and things like that. I think his guys have just lined up and come at him, and so then that flips the question to, oh boy, those guys rushing the passer, maybe they've improved. It's a little bit of both, but I think that the pass pro has got to get better as the season goes along. But that whole offensive line, they need to develop that 6th, that 7th guy where you feel comfortable, but be functional. I just need the offensive line this year to be functional. Not to be wow, but as a 5-some, just be functional and not have the warts that you had last year where we don't know until you play a game, those false starts, those untimely penalties, things like that.
Gary, we got a couple minutes left here, Gary, and I want to get to high school football, but really fast, based on everything you've been saying here this morning, would you recommend I take the under of 50.5 points?
Yeah, I don't. I think in this game, I don't win. But I don't like where it's crept up to 13 points. I can see Nebraska winning by 7 to 9, maybe 10 points in this game. I've never liked the line in this contest, but I do like Nebraska to win.
Gary Sharp with us, Hail Varsity Radio. You had Bellevue West and Creighton Prep last night, and a lot of Division I potential, especially at Bellevue West. Danny Kalin gets his first start at quarterback. He has a Nebraska offer, throws a touchdown pass to Davion Hall, who's got a Nebraska offer. What did you make of Prep? They seem a little bit resurgent. They were kind of in the doldrums for, the early kind of 2010s. They seem like they're kind of back on their usual footing.
Great ball game. Great ball game last night.
Yeah, Tim Young, Husker, won the state championship at Omaha Gross. He's been at Prep now for 6 years. He's got that program turned around. I mean, they are big. The problem, though, is they're going to a quarterback that can complete a forward pass. They have Marty Brown, a steal for North Dakota State. They're running behind one of the bigger offensive and the more experienced offensive lines in the state. And Sam Sledge is the real deal, guys. Sam Sledge will come to Nebraska, and he will play a lot of football for Nebraska. He's an offensive tackle. Great. He was really good last night on both sides of the ball. They just can't throw the ball. Noah Vedrill's brother, Ezra, his younger brother, is Prep's roster, and he's on the quarterback last night. They just got to be better at football instead of just relying on the quarterback run game. On the other side of the ball, Bellevue West, Dan Kalin looked really, really good. He looked comfortable. It's the first time he's a starter. I know he had some nerves, but there were flashes where you're like, he has a big boy arm. The thing about his Nebraska hasn't had a lot of contact with him for a while, so I don't know where that stands. He's got 10 Power 5 offers. Omaha is really good. Looks like a typical receiver that's got good hands, runs really well, runs after the catch. West is very, very talented. But what a showcase to play week 0. I mean, it was like a row of seniors and high school prospects. Chucky Hepburn was there. It was fun last night. It was a really good game that came down to the final minute where Bellevue West scored a touchdown with over a minute to go to win 28-21. But those are two rosters that are stacked full of talent. We're in a state this year where we've got 10 Power 5 prospects that are playing football in the class of 23. That's great for the state of Nebraska, and hopefully it ends up being great for Nebraska for players that they're bringing along down to Lincoln. That includes Sam Sledge or Kramer up at our school backyard in Southeast. So football is in a good spot in the state.
Sharpie, real quick, if folks want to watch, because you're doing a lot of Friday night, Thursday night TV broadcasts, but is there a Twitter spot handle folks can go to check out your games?
Twitter handle, but I can send you a K on Thursday nights. If you haven't seen St. Flores, we have Brent and Booth coming up on Thursday night. And then on the Friday night game, they're on Cox. So it's great. Okay. We're not the only ones that are doing it. A lot across the state. It's a great time of year, guys. And, you guys travel safely over to Ireland. I'm looking forward to your coverage. It's a unique day for Nebraska. I think some players might be sitting up until why are we here? Hopefully they get the full experience because they're probably never going to come back to Dublin in their entire lifetime. But it is a business trip. All that matters between now and then, and Nebraska's still got 2 full padded practices to go before they hit the airplane and go to Ireland, is they've got to find a way to win by at least 1 point. Nebraska cannot fall a week from today. They've got to win a football game for the psyche of the interior and the exterior for Nebraska football. So I'm looking forward to it, guys, and I can't see that.
Gary Sharp. Sharpie, be good, man. Have a good week. Thanks so much. There he is, Gary Sharp. Elijah Herbal back in our studios. Mark Kranak. Good, sir. We will get things packed and ready to go.
It's on.
And we will be back with you Monday at Hail Varsity at 4. Take care. Have a great weekend. Thanks for your time.